The day my grandmother died, I lost the only person who had ever loved me without conditions. She wasn't rich in the way people imagined. She never wore expensive jewelry or drove a luxury car. She lived in the same white farmhouse for over 40 years, grew roses in her backyard, and baked peach pies every Sunday. But what she left behind changed my life forever. At least, that's what I believed. My name is Emily, and 5 years ago, I thought I had everything: a loving husband, a stable home, and a future filled with hope. I had been married to Daniel for 6 years. He was charming, funny, and always knew the right thing to say. My friends often joked that I had found the perfect husband. I believed them. Whenever I worked late, he would cook dinner. Whenever I felt overwhelmed, he'd tell me everything would be okay. He never raised his voice. He never seemed controlling. If anything, people admired him. But sometimes the biggest betrayals come wrapped in the kindest smiles. 3 weeks after my grandmother's funeral, I received a call from her attorney. "There is something your grandmother wanted you to have," he said. I expected old family photographs or maybe a handwritten letter. Instead, he slid a folder across his desk. Inside were legal documents showing she had left me nearly $700,000. My hands started shaking. I read the number 3 times before it finally felt real. Along with the money came the farmhouse and several acres of land that had been in our family for generations. My grandmother had written one short note. "Emily, this isn't just money. It's freedom. Promise me you'll never let anyone take it away from you." I cried all the way home. Daniel hugged me tightly when I told him. "I'm so proud of your grandmother," he whispered. "You deserve this." Those words comforted me. I had no reason to doubt him. Over the next few weeks, life became a whirlwind. The attorney helped me transfer the inheritance into a new account. Daniel insisted that I shouldn't stress over financial paperwork. "I'll help you manage everything," he said. "I work with numbers every day. You shouldn't have to worry." It sounded reasonable. After all, married couples shared responsibilities, didn't they? At first, nothing seemed unusual. We paid off our mortgage. We replaced our old roof. I donated money to a local animal shelter because my grandmother adored dogs. Everything felt right. Then Daniel's younger brother, Ryan, suddenly appeared in our lives. Ryan had always been difficult. He jumped from one failed business to another. He borrowed money from everyone. He never paid anyone back. Whenever he visited, there was always another excuse. "The economy is terrible. My business partner cheated me. I just need one more chance." I noticed Daniel slipping him cash once or twice. It bothered me, but it wasn't my place to judge. Families help each other. Or so I thought. One evening, Ryan showed up carrying expensive golf clubs. Brand new. I knew they cost thousands of dollars. "Business finally taking off?" I asked. Ryan laughed. "You could say that." Daniel quickly changed the subject. Later that night, I asked him where Ryan got the money. Daniel shrugged. Maybe he got a loan. Something about his answer felt rehearsed. Months passed. Little things began to change. Daniel suddenly became interested in our finances. He insisted on handling every bank statement. Whenever I asked about investments, he'd smile. "Everything's growing beautifully." I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? Then one afternoon, I stopped by the bank to withdraw money for renovations at my grandmother's farmhouse. The teller looked confused. "I'm sorry," she said. "There aren't enough available funds in this account." I blinked. There must be a mistake. She checked again. "The balance is much lower than you think." My stomach tightened. I asked for a printed statement. As the pages slid across the counter, my heart pounded. Large withdrawals. Wire transfers. Amounts of $20,000, $30,000, $50,000. Again and again. None of them looked familiar. I stared at the papers, unable to breathe. Had someone hacked my account? Was this identity theft? I drove home as fast as I could. Daniel was sitting on the porch drinking coffee. He smiled when he saw me. "You're home early." I placed the bank statement on the table. "Can you explain these?" His smile disappeared for just a second. Then it came back. Oh, those. He laughed softly. I forgot to tell you. Forgot? Forgot to mention tens of thousands of dollars? What do you mean you forgot? They're investments. What investments? He waved his hand casually. Private opportunities. With whom? You wouldn't know them. His answer didn't calm me. It terrified me. For the first time in our marriage, I realized I knew almost nothing about our finances. That night I couldn't sleep. Something deep inside me kept whispering that my grandmother's warning wasn't just a coincidence. The next morning, Daniel left early for work. Or so he said. An hour later, I received a phone notification from our home security camera. Someone was in the driveway. I opened the live feed. Ryan stepped out of a brand new black SUV. Daniel walked outside carrying a thick manila envelope. The two brothers shook hands. Then Daniel handed Ryan the envelope. Ryan opened it, smiled, and hugged him. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I watched Ryan climb back into the SUV and drive away. My heart sank. Something wasn't right. Not even close. And I had a feeling my inheritance was at the center of it all. I replayed the security camera footage at least 20 times. Each time, I noticed something new. Daniel looked nervous. Ryan looked excited. And that envelope. It wasn't thin. It was packed. There was no way it contained a few documents. Something important had changed hands. I wanted to confront Daniel immediately. Instead, I closed my laptop and forced myself to stay calm. If something was really wrong, accusing him without proof would only make him more careful. That evening, Daniel came home carrying my favorite takeout, Thai food. He kissed my forehead as if nothing had happened. Long day, he asked. I smiled. Very. He didn't mention Ryan. He didn't mention the envelope. And he certainly didn't mention the missing money. For the first time in our marriage, I lied to my husband. I think I'm going to bed early. Instead, I stayed awake until he was asleep. At 2 a.m, I quietly picked up his phone from the nightstand. I knew his passcode. It was our wedding anniversary. Simple. Predictable. The phone unlocked. My heart raced. I opened his messages. Most conversations were ordinary. Work. Friends. Family. Then I found Ryan's name. There were hundreds of messages. The newest one made my stomach drop. Ryan. She still doesn't know. Daniel replied only seconds later. She won't. Just stay patient. I stopped breathing. I kept scrolling. Another message from 3 weeks earlier. Ryan. The house closes Friday. Daniel. Perfect. Make sure everything stays in your name. The house? What house? I searched further back. Most of the older messages had been deleted. Only scattered pieces remained. Enough to make one thing painfully clear. They were hiding something together. I carefully put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Sleep never came. The next morning, I called the attorney who had handled my grandmother's estate. I need a recommendation, I said. For what? A forensic accountant. There was silence. Then he quietly replied, Emily, has something happened? I'm not sure, but I think someone has been stealing from me. 2 days later, I sat across from Michael Harris, a forensic accountant who specialized in financial fraud. He spent nearly 3 hours reviewing every statement I had brought. Occasionally, he circled a transaction with a red pen. Then another. Then another. Finally, he looked up. Mrs. Carter. His expression was serious. These aren't investment transfers. My heart sank. What are they? They're direct wire transfers. To whom? I don't know yet. But someone has been moving your inheritance into multiple accounts. Legally? He shook his head. That depends. Were these transfers authorized by you? No. Did you sign any paperwork allowing someone else to move your money? I don't think so. He frowned. I'll need copies of every document you signed after receiving your inheritance. As I drove home, memories flooded back. Daniel had often placed papers in front of me. Just routine banking forms. Insurance updates. Tax documents. I rarely read them carefully. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? 3 days later, Michael called. His voice sounded different. I found something. I rushed to his office. He placed several documents on the table. One page had my signature. At least, it looked like my signature. This authorizes your husband to make financial decisions regarding the inheritance. I never signed that. He slid another page beside it. This one gives him power to transfer funds. I stared in disbelief. The signature isn't identical. What do you mean? He pointed to tiny details I would never have noticed. The angle of the letters, the spacing, the pressure marks. Then he said the words that changed everything. I believe these signatures were forged. The room suddenly felt smaller. Daniel hadn't just lied. Someone had forged my name. I felt sick. Michael wasn't finished. I also traced several transfers. Where did they go? He opened another folder. Most of the money eventually ended up in one account. Whose account? He turned the page. Ryan Mitchell. Daniel's brother. I couldn't speak. Nearly $300,000. Gone. Transferred over 8 months. Not borrowed. Not invested. Given away. I stared at Ryan's name until the letters blurred together. Michael continued. There's more. I found a recent real estate purchase. What kind of property? A lake house. The photograph showed a beautiful modern home sitting beside crystal clear water. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Private dock. Luxury finishes. The purchase price was almost exactly the amount transferred into Ryan's account. The owner. Ryan Mitchell. I remembered him pretending to struggle financially. Complaining he couldn't pay rent. Asking relatives for loans. All while living in a $500,000 lake house. Paid for with my grandmother's inheritance. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the file. What do I do now? Michael leaned forward. Don't confront them. Not yet. Why? Because if they know you're investigating, they'll start hiding evidence. So what should I do? Act normal. Meanwhile, I'll continue tracing every dollar. That evening, Daniel came home smiling. I have a surprise. What is it? My parents want everyone together this weekend. Family dinner. Ryan would be there. I forced a smile. Sounds wonderful. Inside, I wanted to scream. Saturday evening arrived. Ryan pulled into the driveway in the same brand new SUV. This time he wore an expensive watch I'd never seen before. His wife stepped out carrying a designer handbag worth more than my monthly salary. No one questioned how they suddenly became wealthy. Everyone simply admired their success. During dinner, Ryan raised a glass. I've been blessed lately. Daniel smiled proudly. So have we. Our eyes met across the table. For just a second, I wondered whether he felt guilty, whether he knew I was beginning to uncover everything. Then Ryan laughed and said something that froze my blood. I couldn't have done it without family. Daniel quietly lifted his wine glass. Family takes care of family. Everyone smiled. Everyone except me. Because I finally understood what my grandmother meant. Promise me you'll never let anyone take it away from you. She hadn't been talking about strangers. She'd been warning me about the people sitting around my own dinner table. For the next 2 weeks, I became an actress in my own marriage. Every morning, I kissed Daniel goodbye before work. Every evening, I laughed at his jokes. I thanked him for making dinner. I pretended everything was normal. But inside, I was collecting evidence against the man I had once trusted with my entire heart. Michael continued tracing the money while I hired an attorney named Rebecca Lawson. Unlike me, Rebecca didn't waste time on emotions. She focused on facts. After reviewing everything, she closed the folder and looked directly at me. Emily, this isn't just financial abuse. What do you mean? If these signatures are forged, we're looking at fraud. She paused. Possibly several felonies. The words hit me like a truck. Daniel wasn't simply a husband who had made bad decisions. If everything was true, he had committed a crime. Rebecca leaned back. I have one question. Anything. When did your husband first learn about your grandmother's estate? I thought for a moment. I told him after the funeral. She nodded. And before that? I don't think he knew anything. Michael, who had been quietly reviewing another folder, suddenly looked up. I wouldn't be so sure. He handed me several printed emails. We recovered these through your attorney's document request. The first email was dated 6 months before my grandmother passed away. It was from Daniel to Ryan. The subject line read, "Grandma's property." My hands started trembling before I even opened it. Inside were only 2 sentences. If everything goes the way we think, Emily will inherit everything. We just have to be patient. I felt the air leave my lungs. 6 months before my grandmother died. They were already talking about my inheritance. Another email appeared underneath. Once the money comes through, we'll finally be able to buy the lake house. The date? For months before the funeral. They had planned everything before I inherited a single dollar. I burst into tears. Not because of the money. Because every smile, every hug, every comforting word after my grandmother's death had been part of their plan. Rebecca gently handed me a tissue. "I'm sorry. I should have seen it." "No." She shook her head. People who manipulate others are often very good at hiding who they really are. For the first time since all of this began, I stopped blaming myself. That afternoon, Rebecca made another discovery. She searched county property records. The lake house wasn't the only purchase. Ryan had recently bought 2 rental properties, a luxury pickup truck, and invested in a small construction company. The total? Nearly $600,000. Almost the exact amount missing from my inheritance. Every penny had been spent building Ryan's new life, using my grandmother's final gift to me. Rebecca smiled for the first time. They made one huge mistake. What? They were greedy. The more money they moved, the more evidence they created. For the next several days, we quietly gathered everything. Bank records, emails, property documents, security camera footage, phone records, wire transfers. Then Michael uncovered something none of us expected. There was one transfer that failed. "What do you mean?" He turned his laptop toward me. A transfer of $100,000 had been rejected by the bank because the signature verification failed. The bank had emailed Daniel requesting additional authorization. Instead of responding, he created a fake authorization form. And this time, the bank accepted it. Rebecca smiled. "That failed transfer is important." "Why?" "Because it proves intent. They knew they didn't have permission. They tried anyway." She closed the file. This case just became much stronger. A week later, Daniel surprised me again. "I booked us a weekend getaway." "Really? You've seemed stressed lately." For a moment, I almost laughed. The man who had stolen my inheritance wanted to take me on a romantic vacation. I agreed. Rebecca had advised me to stay calm until everything was ready. So we drove 3 hours to a beautiful mountain resort. Daniel was unusually affectionate, holding my hand, opening doors, ordering my favorite wine. Watching him made my heart ache. Not because I loved him anymore, but because I realized none of it felt genuine. Late Saturday night, Daniel fell asleep on the couch after drinking too much. His phone buzzed. One new message. "Ryan." I opened it. "The lawyer says everything is safe now." Daniel replied only minutes earlier. "Good. Once she signs the refinancing papers next month, we're clear forever." Refinancing papers? I had never agreed to refinance anything. The next morning, while Daniel showered, I searched the folder he'd brought for the trip. Inside was a stack of mortgage documents. Buried near the back, a refinancing agreement. My signature line was highlighted with a yellow sticky note. "Sign here." The loan would use my grandmother's farmhouse as collateral. If I signed it, the property could be lost forever. I quietly took pictures of every page with my phone, then placed everything back exactly as I'd found it. When we returned home Sunday evening, I drove straight to Rebecca's office. She examined the paperwork carefully. Then she looked at me with absolute certainty. "Emily, they're trying to steal the farmhouse too." I closed my eyes. The farmhouse. The roses. The porch where Grandma used to wave every evening. The kitchen where we baked peach pies together. It wasn't enough that they'd taken the money. Now they wanted the only place that still felt like home. Rebecca stood. We're done waiting. She picked up her phone. I'm filing for an emergency court order tomorrow morning. What happens then? They won't see it coming. The next morning at exactly 9:15, court documents were filed. The judge immediately froze every account connected to the stolen inheritance. Ryan's bank accounts, his business accounts, even the mortgage on the lake house. Neither brother knew it yet, but their perfect plan had just begun to fall apart. At 11:42 that morning, my phone rang. It was Daniel. His voice sounded panicked. Emily, something's wrong. Our accounts are frozen. I took a slow breath. For the first time in months. I didn't pretend. No, Daniel. I said quietly. What's wrong is that you thought I'd never find out. Daniel stood frozen in the living room, his phone still pressed against his ear. I had never heard fear in his voice before. Now it was impossible to miss. What are you talking about? He asked. You heard me. I know about the money. Silence. Then came the sentence that destroyed whatever remained of our marriage. Emily. I can explain. I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because after months of lies, those 4 words meant absolutely nothing. You forged my signature. You transferred my inheritance. You bought your brother a new life. And now you want my grandmother's farmhouse. His face turned pale. For several seconds, he simply stared at me. Then his expression changed. Not to guilt. To anger. You've been spying on me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's your defense? You stole hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're upset because I discovered it? He slammed his hand against the kitchen counter. You don't understand. No, Daniel. I stepped closer. I understand perfectly. You thought I would never ask questions. He rubbed both hands across his face. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. That sentence caught my attention. What wasn't? He looked toward the floor. The money. It was only temporary. I almost laughed again. Temporary. We were going to pay it back. When? His silence answered for him. There had never been a plan to repay anything. Just another lie. A loud knock interrupted us. Daniel walked to the front door. When he opened it, Ryan pushed his way inside. His face was bright red. What did you do? He shouted before even looking at me. My accounts are frozen. Daniel pulled him toward the hallway. Keep your voice down. Ryan ignored him. My business account is locked. I can't access anything. The mortgage company called. They're saying there's a court order. Then Ryan finally noticed me standing in the kitchen. His confidence disappeared instantly. He realized I knew. You told her. Ryan asked quietly. Daniel didn't answer. Ryan cursed under his breath. Then something happened I never expected. The 2 brothers began blaming each other. You said she'd never notice. Ryan yelled. Daniel fired back. You were the one spending money like an idiot. You bought 2 houses. You bought that ridiculous truck. Ryan laughed bitterly. You were spending just as much. I was following your plan. My plan? Daniel shouted. You kept asking for more. Their argument became louder and louder. Every accusation revealed another secret. Another lie. Another piece of evidence. I quietly picked up my phone. The voice recorder was already running. Rebecca had suggested I record any conversation if possible. Now, the brothers were confessing without realizing it. You forged the papers. Ryan shouted. I didn't even know how much you'd transferred until later. Daniel answered immediately. I forged them because you kept demanding money. You said this was our chance. Ryan pointed directly at him. You told me she trusted you too much to ever check. The room went silent. Neither man realized what they'd just admitted. I slowly held up my phone. The recording light was still blinking. Both of them stared at it. Daniel's eyes widened. You recorded us? I nodded. I recorded the truth. Ryan looked ready to panic. He grabbed Daniel's arm. We need a lawyer. No, I said. You need several. That afternoon, I moved into my grandmother's farmhouse. It had been sitting empty for months while renovations continued. Walking through the front door felt different now. Safer. The smell of old wood and fresh paint reminded me of childhood summers. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. The next morning, Rebecca called. "I have good news." "What happened?" "The judge approved a temporary injunction." "What does that mean?" "It means neither Daniel nor Ryan can sell, transfer, or hide any assets." I smiled. They're trapped. Exactly. Over the next month, the investigation moved quickly. Bank investigators confirmed forged documents. A handwriting expert compared my real signature to the fake ones. His conclusion was simple. The signatures were not written by the same person. Every report strengthened the case. Then another surprise arrived. Daniel's parents asked to meet me. I almost refused. But curiosity won. We met at a quiet coffee shop. His mother looked exhausted. She reached across the table. "Emily." "We didn't know." I studied her face. For the first time, I believed her. His father placed an envelope in front of me. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside were copies of emails, bank statements, and handwritten notes. I found these in Daniel's old office. His mother began crying. "We raised him better than this." I looked through the documents. One note caught my attention, written entirely in Daniel's handwriting. "Once the inheritance clears, Ryan can finally buy the lake property. Emily never checks financial documents anyway." The note was dated 8 months before my grandmother passed away. They hadn't just planned the theft. They had planned to take advantage of my trust. Long before there was anything to steal. His father lowered his head. "We're ashamed. I don't expect forgiveness. But you deserve every piece of evidence we have." I thanked them quietly. As I stood to leave, Daniel's mother stopped me. "For what it's worth, my husband and I changed our wills yesterday." I looked confused. She smiled sadly. "Daniel won't inherit anything from us." A week later, mediation was scheduled. The court wanted both sides to attempt a settlement before trial. Daniel arrived wearing the same expensive suit he had worn on our anniversary. Ryan looked exhausted. Neither brother smiled. The mediator spoke first. "Mrs. Carter, what would you like to see happen today?" I answered without hesitation. "I want every dollar returned. And if that's impossible, then I want every asset purchased with my inheritance." The room became very quiet. Ryan leaned forward. "Emily, it wasn't all Daniel's fault." I looked directly at him. "You accepted the money. You spent it. You knew where it came from." He looked away. Daniel finally spoke. "If we sell the lake house," Rebecca interrupted, "that won't be enough." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She calmly opened a folder. "Because we've now identified over $780,000 in damages." His eyes widened. "That's impossible." "No," Rebecca replied. "Interest, legal fees, fraud damages, and the value of investments Emily lost because you stole her inheritance." Daniel's face lost all color. For the first time, he understood the true cost of his choices. The mediator looked around the room. "Do you wish to make a settlement offer?" Ryan whispered something to Daniel. Daniel slowly nodded. Then he looked at me. "We'll sell everything. The lake house, the truck, the rental properties. We'll repay every dollar." I held his gaze for several seconds. Then I answered, "No." The room froze. Daniel blinked. "What?" "I don't trust promises anymore. I'll see you in court." I stood, picked up my purse, and walked out without looking back. As I reached the courthouse steps, Rebecca caught up with me. "You surprised them." "I know." She smiled. "And tomorrow, they're going to be even more surprised." "What happens tomorrow?" Rebecca handed me a single sheet of paper. Across the top were 4 words that made my heart race. "Criminal charges approved." The courtroom was silent. Daniel sat beside his attorney, staring at the table. Ryan looked completely different from the confident man who had once arrived at family dinners wearing expensive watches and designer clothes. Now both brothers looked exhausted. Their confidence had disappeared. Their smiles were gone. Only fear remained. I took a deep breath as Rebecca whispered, "Whatever happens today, remember one thing. You've already won." I wasn't sure I believed her. No court could give me back the months I had spent questioning my own judgment. No judge could erase the betrayal. No amount of money could restore the marriage I thought I had. But maybe justice could help me begin again. The hearing started at 9 o'clock. The judge reviewed the evidence one document at a time. Bank records, property purchases, wire transfers, expert reports confirming forged signatures, emails discussing the inheritance months before my grandmother's death. Every page told the same story. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a carefully planned theft. Then came the recording. Rebecca handed the court a copy of the conversation I had secretly recorded. The room became completely quiet. The judge listened as Ryan shouted, "You said she'd never notice." Then Daniel's voice filled the courtroom. "I forged them because you kept demanding money." Neither brother could deny it. They had confessed in their own words. When the recording ended, Daniel lowered his head. His attorney leaned over and whispered something to him. Daniel slowly stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to make a statement." The judge nodded. "You may." Daniel turned toward me. His eyes were filled with tears. Or perhaps regret. It was impossible to tell the difference. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt Emily. It started as a loan. I thought I'd replace the money before she noticed. But things kept getting bigger. We bought the lake house. Then Ryan wanted to expand his business. I kept believing I could fix everything." He looked directly at me. "I know that's not an excuse." "No," I answered quietly. "It isn't." Ryan stood next. Unlike Daniel, he wasn't crying. He looked angry. "This isn't fair. I didn't forge anything. I only accepted money my brother gave me." Rebecca immediately stood. "Mr. Mitchell, were you aware the money came from Mrs. Carter's inheritance?" Ryan hesitated. "Yes." "Were you aware she had not approved those transfers?" Another long pause. "Yes." "So you knowingly spent stolen money?" Ryan looked toward his attorney. It was too late. The answer had already been given. The judge wrote several notes before speaking. "The evidence is overwhelming." He paused for a moment. "This court finds that Mrs. Carter's inheritance was unlawfully transferred through fraudulent documentation." He continued reading. "All assets purchased directly or indirectly with those funds are hereby subject to immediate recovery." I closed my eyes. The lake house, the rental properties, the truck, the investment accounts, everything. The judge wasn't finished. He looked directly at Daniel. "Based upon the evidence presented, this matter will also proceed to criminal court regarding allegations of forgery, financial fraud, and conspiracy." A quiet gasp spread through the courtroom. Daniel closed his eyes. Ryan buried his face in his hands. For months they had believed they were untouchable. Now, everything was gone. The civil process took several more months. The lake house was sold. Ryan's investment company was liquidated. The luxury truck was auctioned. Several bank accounts were seized. One by one, the money came back. Not every dollar. Some had already been lost, but enough to rebuild my future. Daniel repeatedly asked to speak with me. I refused every request. The man I had loved no longer existed. Or perhaps, he never had. One afternoon, I visited my grandmother's farmhouse. The roses had started blooming again. I spent the day planting new flowers along the front walkway. While digging near the old oak tree, my shovel struck something solid. It was a small metal box. Rust covered the lid. Curious, I carried it onto the porch. Inside were dozens of old photographs, letters, and one sealed envelope with my name written across the front. The handwriting belonged to my grandmother. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. "My dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means life has probably become more difficult than either of us hoped. Money has a strange way of revealing people's true character. Some people see it as security. Others see it as opportunity. The wrong people see it as permission. Tears blurred the page. She continued. Never confuse kindness with weakness. Trust should be earned, not assumed. And remember, the greatest inheritance I could ever leave you isn't money. It's the strength to stand up for yourself. I cried harder than I had at her funeral, because she had known. Maybe not exactly what would happen, but she understood human nature. She knew that wealth could attract the wrong people. She hoped I would be strong enough to protect myself. Finally, I had. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. The farmhouse had been fully restored. I turned part of the land into a community garden. The old barn became a reading center for children. Every Saturday, families gathered there for free workshops, gardening classes, and homemade pie, just like my grandmother used to make. The inheritance that had almost torn my life apart was now helping other people, exactly as she would have wanted. One crisp autumn morning, I was watering roses when a familiar voice called my name. I turned around. Daniel stood at the front gate. He looked older, thinner. His expensive suits were gone. He wore simple jeans and carried no confidence at all. I won't come in, he said. I just wanted to say something. I remained silent. He looked around the property. It looks beautiful. Thank you. Another long silence followed. I lost everything. He said it so quietly that I almost didn't hear him. My job. My house. My brother barely speaks to me. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know. He swallowed hard. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. And I destroyed it. I looked at him for several moments. Years earlier, hearing those words would have meant everything. Now, they meant nothing. Not because I hated him, but because I had finally learned something important. Closure doesn't come from someone else's apology. It comes from your own healing. I hope you become a better man someday, I said. But that journey doesn't include me. He nodded slowly. I understand. Then he walked away. I watched until he disappeared down the road. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I simply turned back toward the garden. Toward my future. Toward the life I had rebuilt with my own hands. As the sun began to set behind the farmhouse, I remembered my grandmother's final words. This isn't just money. It's freedom. For a long time, I thought freedom meant financial security. I was wrong. Freedom is knowing your worth. Freedom is walking away from people who betray your trust. Freedom is rebuilding your life without bitterness. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't getting revenge. It's creating a life so peaceful that the people who hurt you become nothing more than a chapter you've already finished. Lesson from the story. Sometimes the deepest betrayals come from the people we trust the most. Love should never require blind trust, and kindness should never mean giving up control of your own future. Money can be earned again, but integrity, honesty, and trust are priceless. Protect what you've worked for, ask questions without guilt, and remember that real love never asks you to sacrifice your security for someone else's greed. In the end, healing and self-respect are far more valuable than revenge.